John, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast today.
Well, hey, thank you so much, Chris. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited to dive into things.
Awesome. So, can you give the audience a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Thank you so much. Well, hey, hi, hello. My name is John Hammond. I kind of work during the day as a cybersecurity researcher, a company called Huntress that does a lot of endpoint detection response, managed security platform stuff, trying to help raise the bar in cybersecurity. But on the side, when I can fit it in, I like to try to share a whole lot of education and training. It's silly. I have a YouTube channel where I just try to put out videos and education and just content that can help get folks a little bit smarter in cybersecurity and on the keyboard and on technical stuff, whether it's malware, dark web, scams, and cybercrime, just all the stuff that's out there.
That's neat. Is that a field that you desired to go into, or was it the boss asked you, "Hey, can you do this?" or was this been your dream since a kid?
Well, I'll say, I think as a kid growing up, I was thinking, hey, I want to make video games, or I want to be a hacker like I see in the movies, how media and Hollywood sort of glamorizes all that. But I don't know. I never expected the cybersecurity route. I thought I'd stick with, hey, just programming or development or writing software. But sometimes it's also breaking software and protecting software.
So, what got you into the cyber side of things then?
Yeah. So crash course, and forgive me if I start rambling, but I honestly attended one of the United States sort of military academies, like the institution like a West Point or an Annapolis for the military academy or the Naval Academy. I attended the Coast Guard Academy.
Okay.
And, getting into a little bit more of a government or military scene, they think it's really cool. If sure, you can make a program or craft out this application, but they want to know, look, is this thing battle ready? Is it battle tested? Is it strong? Is it sturdy? Can it ever be taken advantage of or exploited or compromised? So that just sort of opened the door for different vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and seeing how things can be taken advantage of when, hey, sometimes you prey on human intellect, or hey, just take advantage for social engineering one way or another. There's a lot of work to do.
Yes, there is. So, speaking of being taken advantage of, I love to ask my guests who are in the cybersecurity space if they've ever been a victim of a cybercrime or been scammed in some way, or a close family member.
Ooh. So not yet is probably the safest answer on that front. I don't think that I've fallen for anything quite yet. It's maybe tough to know, but I have certainly seen the attempts. I've seen the anyone that might try to send, hey, here's a sponsorship deal or a new partner we could do for your YouTube channel. And it's malware. It's an information stealer, something to go rip out all my passwords and credit card details of that. But thankfully, I like to think I have the know-how to not fall for that, but make sense of it, analyze it, understand it, and then share that education for others. In doing so, I think I have gotten a couple threat actors and adversaries a little bit angry. I might have ruffled their feathers a little bit. There's a post on a cybercrime forum or one of the dark web bulletin boards that would try to dox me. John Hammond, right? It'd say, hey, here's John Hammond's full name, address, birthday, phone number, all the information that they could get for the fulls or full information. But thankfully, they got it wrong. They got my birthday correct, but they did not get my address right. Weird to laugh at that, I know.
Okay, so let's talk about doxing. So for the audience who doesn't know what doxing is, what is doxing? Gamers will understand it, but outside of gamers, I don't know that people will know.
Yeah, well, look, the thing about the internet is that it's to a certain extent anonymous, right? Hey, you get to choose your handle, your alias, your nickname, and you're behind the keyboard, you're across the screen. No one sees or knows who you are. So if someone maybe has some ill intent or is angry or upset and they want to get back at you, whether it's vengeance or whatever, they will dox you. And if they could track down and find everything about you, your home address, your mother's maiden name, your parents, your siblings, I don't know, your children, if whatever they could track down, passport, driver's information, if they could just spit that out across the internet, make it publicly available so that they have a haha, we got this person, we've doxed them and shared all their information and they've lost their anonymity. That is doxing.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it usually used in intent to get people to show up at your house, or just to tear down the veil of anonymity?
I'll admit, I think it varies. More often than not, I think it is the latter. I think it is just, hey, we want to make them feel unsafe or make them concerned. I don't know, maybe how often or how frequently it turns into something more. Hey, yeah, you could have some bad people just show up where you are. That's a whole nother can of worms. Yeah. We could get into swatting and live stream shenanigans, but it is still just for, I don't know, the angry spite and cybercrime.
It's that I know who you are, and for someone who thinks they're anonymous, that could get a little scary all of a sudden.
Right.
Oh, you do know who I am. So let's pivot and talk about kind of what is the latest, kind of the cybersecurity threats going on right now, and along with any current scams that you're seeing. Let's start with the cybersecurity threats.
Oh, thank you. So, hey, before we press the record button and start to do the show here, I was telling Chris, I was up a little bit late. I got a couple energy drinks beside me, maybe one or two. But there is this new vulnerability, kind of this emerging breaking current event for a really popular piece of software called Screen Connect. If folks, maybe you're a managed service provider or you're in the business and company that works with a lot of that software from ConnectWise, Screen Connect is one of the applications to remotely monitor and manage endpoints and devices and computers. So when some kind of software like that gets kind of compromised or taken advantage of, it's usually a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Because that could mean a lot more access to a lot more computers, devices, and endpoints. And it's like the keys to the kingdom. So we're all a little bit spooked when yesterday, kind of at the time of our recording here, we saw this new advisory that there was this big CVSS severity score of 10, like the highest criticality you could find. It's an authentication bypass to fully compromise and get like arbitrary code execution. You can make the server do whatever you want on the victim instance. And in doing so, you can control all of the connected clients or agents or endpoints. So we were burning the midnight oil, just trying to chase the ambulance, seeing if we could recreate that, if we could understand the attack. And it's really exciting. I think we succeeded in that. We put together an exploit, but it's a balancing act. And I'm sure you're familiar with this. It's like, how much can we tell people when, look, we want to be doing the right thing. We want to make sure people patch. We want to make sure they update, install those security upgrades. But getting the threat intelligence and indicators of compromise out there, will that accidentally or unintentionally enable threat actors to craft and create their own exploit and now do more damage across the landscape? So just sort of balancing that has been my yesterday, last night, and today morning.
but isn't that the balance that has to happen with any type of threat? You've got to look at the person who finds it says, okay, people can do harm. I want the manufacturer, the developer, whatever to fix this. But we know that there are some companies that are basically, go ahead and report it to us. I'm sure we'll take care of it at some point, and they never do, or it's not prioritized. And at some point, you want to be responsible, but you don't want to be irresponsible. Where is that balance of kind of what's the accepted practice?
So in my mind, it does unfortunately get into a whole lot of nuance. It gets really subjective, but I think a big important component is, truthfully, the complexity. Like, hey, how difficult, how easy, how hard is it to exploit this vulnerability or take advantage of it? If you're crafting some hardcore elite kernel level 0-day, bypassing shell code execution, whatever, maybe that'll take a little bit more muscle to craft that code and to write out how you perform an exploit of vulnerability. Not everyone can do that. I'll be the first to admit. So maybe some of those less sophisticated, and I know that's a can of worms term, but maybe some of those not as skilled threat actors or adversaries that might just pull something off the shelf. They can't craft something of their own. But if it's extremely easy, like it's just changing some number in your address bar, you don't even need to write any code. You just open a web browser. We should probably be careful with how readily we put that out into the world if it gets into bad hands.
All right. I'm trying to go from memory here. Are a lot of the extremely severe in terms of, oh my gosh, if someone does something, they have full unfettered access and can do whatever they want, but the steps that they have to jump through are really complicated to get there. Is that the more common thing, or is it the more common one? Oh, just add a 3 onto the end of the URL and you have access to everything.
Oh man, I wish I had a good answer for you. I feel like it's honestly both. We see, that hardcore crazy wizardry and witchcraft to do some dark magic's exploits with all these hoops and hurdles. But we could also find something that, hey, it's just a string of text. You put it in an input box and hey, now you've got code execution. Log4j, if anyone remembers that.
Yeah. So is this is the Screen Connect vulnerability something that would keep you up at night? Obviously, in researching it has, but is it something that's going to keep you up at night going forward?
Yes. And I'll be a little bit guarded and tight-lipped here, forgive me, but the reason I think that we put so much effort and so much real intensity into making sure we could get this right and craft this all out is because this one could be a big deal. And we want to just treat it with the gravity and severity that this might keep not just me up late for many days, but might make a lot of people stay up pretty late.
So it is now the interesting thing is we're recording this at one point in time, and by the time this airs, the situation on the ground may have changed.
Right.
Is this something that can be, if there's a patch available for it that can be quickly rolled out, or is this something where there's a lot of work that has to happen in the background to fix something before it even can be patched?
Yes. So thankfully, there is a patch available. There are security updates, already out on the internet. The cloud instances for, the software as a service solutions, those have already been patched because they can kind of help push the button from the back end there. But a lot of the on-premise installations, when people manage their own business infrastructure, that's got to be patched manually. So we're kind of screaming and shouting to make sure folks do that and board up the windows, lock the doors the best that we can. If I may.
Yeah.
No,
go.
I'd love to riff on that for just a quick second, because that is, again, sort of the balancing act in duality. Because, look, they put out a patch, and that at least clues us in as to what the problem was, because we could just sort of take these two puzzle pieces, put them side by side, and check and find the differences. Hey, what's different between the patch and the previous version? And that will help zoom in on what the real vulnerability is and how we might be able to exploit it. So that is what helped us kind of analyze and uncover and recreate this attack chain. But I'm cognizant that, hey, if we could do it, so can anyone else. And threat actors and adversaries might already be up in action, trying to patch diff and analyze and recreate things.
So is one of the biggest challenges kind of these smaller companies that don't know to patch or don't even have a patching process in place?
Absolutely. And forgive me if I'm getting on a soapbox, I don't mean to, but managed service providers, especially, or small mid-market businesses, and maybe folks listening in, you probably familiar with, or maybe you're working at, or you did work at previously, a spot where it's a one-person show. Hey, you're the IT individual, you're the security individual, you're the operations individual all at once, maybe. And the time, people, personnel, money, resources, there's more that, there's something to be desired. So it is certainly trying to get that messaging out for folks that might not be tracking. We want to help the best that we can.
I mean, that was when I was more in the IT profession, that was always one of the things that kept me up at night,
Yeah.
is that we didn't have, we didn't have this outsourced infrastructure management company that would keep everything keep everything clean and
Keep the
happy
lights
and
on, yeah.
patched. It was up to me to know oh gosh, I just heard about a Fortinet issue. Gosh, is it updated? Let me let me go run over to the router tonight at 2 a.m. and run make sure it's patched.
And while you're patching the Fortinet one, you hear about this Citrix vulnerability, and wait a second, this Avanti application. Yeah, it is quite a storm.
That it's almost. I mean, I feel bad for the small businesses and the solopreneurs and the small IT outfits that may have lots of customers that can't afford. Oh, yep, I'm going to come out at 2 a.m. and patch your router once, every time it needs to be patched, or once a month or something like that. That is almost an overwhelming, a very daunting position to be in.
Agreed.
Well, that was the shortest answer ever.
Well, hey, it's funny. I thought I would blend and mix in a little bit of that Screen Connect conversation, because I know, hey, you and all the stuff that you're up to on the podcast, you love to dig into a lot of those scams, a lot of those social engineering deception efforts, when real people, hey, whether they're tech savvy or not, whether they're from the IT industry or in cybersecurity, maybe more often than not, you've got mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, I don't know, maybe folks that just aren't as familiar, they could fall victim to someone calling them on the phone, telling them they need to transfer some money to, hey, get out of some medical bill one way or another, and they're scammed out of something important and valuable to them. Screen Connect is, I gotta be honest, sometimes a vessel for that. You see scammers that want to install TeamViewer on your computer, or AnyDesk, or all these applications that could grant them control, and now they have access to the technology and devices that we pour all our information into.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a moment. There was the movie Beekeeper, just came out about a month ago, and it's kind of based on this premise of some woman allows the remote tech support to get a hold of her remote into her computer and takes all of her life savings, and then the action movie happens after that. Who should we ever allow remote access to our computer, and what tools? Okay, so I guess two questions. Who should we allow access to our computer, and who shouldn't we? And what are the tools that those people would use that in our mind should make us go, uh-oh, I need to be careful about this?
Ooh. I'll admit I'll probably have like a knee-jerk cybersecurity guy response. Is like, no one should touch your computer. No one should remote into it, etc. I would block that the best that I can. I don't know, hey, in some situations, whether or not that is variable, if that can change, if family members that you trust, or in all reality, I understand this is kind of a common vector for malware, especially working professionals that work from home. Sometimes their children, your kids, might use the same device to go do their homework or to play video games. If they try to download some video game cheats or hacks or mods, well, maybe that'll end up with some info stealers that could track down corporate access info and passwords. So it's a balancing act, but the more you can do to limit that attack surface, if you are willing to not share your device with anyone, digitally, remotely, or even physically, that's the best practice I think you can aim for.
I think that was one of the first things that we talked about at the very beginning of the pandemic and work from home was, don't let your kids use your work computer while you're working from home, because who knows what they're going to do. So I was just thinking, so if someone does have, I work for this big company and we do have an IT department, when I'm work from home, what do I do when someone supposedly from the IT department calls me and says, hey, I need to remote in and install a patch?
The best that you can do, truthfully, is kind of go validate that on your own. it's silly. You see a lot of text messages or even just notifications that say from a company or a bank, and they make the statement, "We will never contact you and ask you for your password or your two-factor code or whatever." They would never voluntarily do that. So you kind of have to, I don't know, flip the script a little bit and be like, "All right, let me go call the number that I know and the access that I have, the point of contact that I can deal with, and go make sure this is real. This is legitimate. Just double check, just triple check." And that pays in dividends in all reality if you're willing to verify and validate.
So it's no longer trust but verify, but it's verify then trust.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe trust, maybe not.
Let me just bring my laptop into the office tomorrow, and someone there can take care of it.
If that's possible. I know sometimes it's not always, but hey, that's the best effort and something we should be cognizant of. Keep in mind.
I mean, that is, I suppose, one of the risks from the work from home culture that we now live in is that we now have, from a security perspective, all these devices are now outside of corporate control, in people's homes, connected to who knows what, and it just increases that attack surface exponentially. So what other things should people be watching out for, whether they're consumers or small businesses, in terms of trying to keep themselves protected from the latest cybersecurity incidents?
Oh, hey, I think I might maybe fall on my sword a little bit here, but I think this is just invaluable is just the education, just the awareness, just kind of knowing what's out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is silly, but using Beekeeper as our certain kind of inspiration, or thinking about, scammers and scamming. Are you familiar, Chris, with that whole scam baiting kind of effort and activity?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel, and I know it's silly, but there are a whole lot of other creators or folks on YouTube like this name, Jim Browning or Kit Boga or Scammer Payback or Pierogi, kind of his handle. He's got blue hair, so a lot of folks recognize him. And they like to kind of go on the offense to an appropriate degree of, hey, can we put scammers in their place? And so they stop this. So they know that this is not okay. It's not humane. It's not what our world and civilization needs. And I got to attend and kind of be part of one of their incredible events that they hosted. There was this people's call center is what they call it. Mm-hmm. They get a whole lot of these folks, maybe cybersecurity professionals or these scam baiting folks together. And we have a little Uno reverse card where we have a call center ourselves trying to call the scammers and waste their time and make sure they aren't attacking real victims. But we can, do what we can to make sure that if they are getting at real victims, we can call them, we can notify them, we can stop that scam in progress, and we can make sure and try that won't happen again.
So I had both Jim Browning and Pierogi on previously.
Excellent.
Really neat guys. And I've heard of the People's Call Center. Let's camp out on that and talk about kind of what I think it's just really interesting. What did you guys do? And so what was the premise behind it? I think you talked a little bit about it, but what did you guys actually end up doing?
Thank you so much. So People's Call Center has, I think, a lot of different missions, all centering around, trying to bring the fight back to scammers. So that is wasting their time on phone calls. That is trying to make sure that we could interrupt maybe an active scam and save victims, make sure that they aren't falling victim or sending money, and trying to get a little bit creative, trying to get a little bit more clever in how we could get enough information to help really put a stop to these things. Can we get those scammers arrested? Mm-hmm. So that means getting information, that means getting evidence, that means potentially having something that we could bring to law enforcement so that they could do what they need to do. And it's really kind of interesting, if I may. I, coming from the cybersecurity background, a little bit of coding, a little bit of programming, my project, my own personal effort was to think of, hey, how could we turn on a scammer's webcam? Mm-hmm. So that we might be able to see their face. Because I know, silly, they'll put tape over their webcam or they'll block it off. So with some of the extra access that Jim Browning and these folks tend to have, Pierogi, we could try to turn on their webcam, but if it's covered, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
So I try to put together this silly software that would have this small, stupid pop-up that says, your webcam is overheating. Please remove the webcam cover before the temperature affects your mouse and keyboard. All computer activity and interaction is blocked until the webcam cover is removed. And it's so silly. It's so stupid. I don't think your webcam can overheat. It's a joke. It's a lie. It's a certain kind of social engineering deception right back at them. But it worked. We would get 7 or 8 or maybe 9 or 10 scammers that would peel off the webcam tape, and now we've got a shot of their face. And hey, some of the other individuals could do some cool facial recognition and open source intelligence. That was, I think, a real big win, just to get more tactical details that we could do a little bit more with. So very, very exciting, and an incredible adrenaline rush when we got to see it work. And hey, they fell for the webcam trick.
I mean, it's just really interesting to me that you have someone who is a social engineering, their job is exploiting people via social engineering, and then you just turn the exact same tactics back on them on something that if I saw something saying, hey, your camera's overheating, uncover it, I'd be like,
what?
I've never heard of that before. I would hope I would be suspicious from it from the beginning, but it's interesting that in the moment that you're employing all the same techniques that they employ. Well, they're not going to be able to continue their scam. So they've got that adrenaline going, they've got that emotional high going, and now you've interrupted what they're doing, and it's like, oh well, I better take care of this so I can get back to my own scam.
Right. And especially when we lock their mouse and keyboard, they start to panic a little bit, and it was incredible to see it working.
that is real. That's a neat trick to employ. So, do you know what the end result of that initiative was? Not the keyboard, not the camera locking out, but the people's call center.
Truth be told, hey, it was incredible to work sort of hand in hand, side by side with Pierogi in Scammer Payback, and I believe he was able to get a little bit more intel and take some cases a little bit further for some more investigations. I'll be the first to admit, I don't know for sure. It's great to chat with him back and forth here and there, and get a little bit closer into the community. And I know they are doing incredible things, but not all the things they can talk about.
Yeah. And I suppose, from a legal perspective, they have to be careful about what they're doing as well. Even if you're interfering with a scammer, you're running up against at least gray areas legally that you have to be careful of.
Yes, and I don't mean to. Yeah. I don't mean to speculate or pontificate one way or another, but I agree and acknowledge it can be riding the line a little bit. But I think, and I hope, it's for the right reasons.
Yes.
We want to make sure that, scammers stop scamming, and there aren't as many victims as there are in our world today.
Yeah, I'm generally of the inclination that I am less concerned about a scammer's computer being hacked than my grandma's computer being hacked.
Yeah.
Although I get part of me gets nervous when I say that, not about, grandma's computer being hacked. But when there's more and more stories coming out about some of these call centers, they are people that have basically been kidnapped and are forced to have to participate in these things. So this whole scenario gets very, very scary very quickly.
It was really kind of life-changing for me, and I'll be the first to admit, because I was talking earlier, just, hey, I'm chasing some vulnerability, or I'm digging into some software that's cutting up Java code or C# assemblies, blah blah blah. But seeing such a real world application for what we do and what we can do was honestly, I keep using the word life-changing, but it genuinely was. It's cool to see such meaning and value that could come from what we do.
Yeah, definitely the experience of I kept someone from being scammed, or I made a scammer's life more difficult. uh, is definitely a very rewarding experience. So earlier you talked a little bit about the dark web
Hmm.
and doxing and whatnot. So I haven't done a whole lot of episodes where we've talked too much about the dark web. So can you give an explanation of what is the dark web? What's the risks? To me, it's. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah. So thank you. It's funny. In my mind, the dark web really boils down to just the internet. It's got a certain amount of mystique and aurora, and hey, a lot of folks make it so mysterious when you say the dark web. But
you have to turn off all the lights in the room when you talk about it.
You put your hoodie and your Guy Fawkes mask on, but no. At the end of the day, there's this Tor hidden service sort of protocol, the onion router sort of network architecture, where the way that you connect to a website isn't just, hey, maybe through a couple hops, but maybe through a couple extra hops that actually manipulate the packets or the data that you send between computer to computer. And that's really neat because you get a little bit more anonymity and privacy. It's harder to figure out where a Tor hidden service or onion address might be when it's on the dark web, so to speak. So I can't go to a google.com or a facebook.com. If I wanted to go to a website, I'd have to go to a totally random gibberish V379A12 blah, 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 blah. And you just have to know how to get to where you want to go. Mm-hmm. So with that said, you get a little bit more of the, I don't know what is a appropriate word here for this, but more raw human personality of what they might like, but they might not like. So you get into a little bit more sketchy, maybe uncomfortable stuff of profanity, vulgarity, arms, weapons, drugs, etc. The list could go on and on. But I'll be the first to say just as well, not all of that is real. A lot of it could very well be a scam. It could be cyber criminals trying to scam other cyber criminals, or maybe folks just wanting to make a buck preying on other folks wanting to, hey, can I hire a hitman? Which sounds so weird and so crazy, but maybe that's a thought someone might have. I don't know how, and I can't say for certain what all is real, what all isn't, but I like to try to poke fun or spread light on that and showcase, look, this is the stuff that's out there. You can take it with a grain of salt, but I want to show it to you. So I love getting to do that in videos to see, like, this is a thing that exists, whether you believe it or not.
So I was just reading, there was a news article that FBI and the consortium of international alphabet entities took down one of Lockbit's one of their dark web servers, which it sounds, it's a dark web server, but it's just a server in a data center somewhere that people just didn't know it was what was on that server. and I always wonder, because you hear these stories from time to time, is how long did the alphabet entities run the service for their own benefit in terms of, now that we have this possession of this hardware, how long do we keep it up and collect information on people that are accessing these sites? And how much how much criminal investigation are we doing based off of this?
The honeypot sort of idea to a certain extent. Yeah.
And I like your point about some of the dark web being, some of it is just a scam, so to speak, or scammers targeting scammers, because I can see the sort of thing of, I'm going on the dark web to buy illicit drugs, and so I send someone money via crypto, send them some crypto, and my drugs don't show up in the mail, or my illicit materials don't show up in the mail. It's not like I'm going to turn around and go to my local police department and report that. Right.
And hey, the thing about cryptocurrency is that's kind of one and done.
Yeah.
You send that, it's not coming back. So
what is the most kind of most interesting thing, not necessarily illicit, that you have seen on the dark web?
Well, so I more of a cybersecurity flair to it, right? I do like to try to make sense of the threat actors and adversaries that I know are real. Those
Hmm.
aren't scams. Like Lockbit ransomware, like, hey, we could list out Conti, Revo, and Dark Bladder. There's so much. Uh, that is real cybercrime. And I do want to kind of track what are their tactics? What are their techniques? What are their tools? What are they up to? What are they talking about? So there are a lot of those forums where some of
Hmm.
those computer cyber criminals hang out, and they'll sell their tools or they'll sell access logs, database breaches, etc. And for my own sort of research for my day job, we wanted to understand how threat actors and adversaries are weaponizing some cool file type, like a Windows
Hmm.
shortcut, a desktop icon. And there was this tool called Quantum Builder that was out being sold on the dark web. And I reached out over Telegram and said, "Hi, how can I buy the Quantum Builder? How do I do it?" Just so I, could kind of do the research, but play a little bit of an interesting double side here. Could I be able to understand and see what you've weaponized this file type for? And maybe this is a silly, stupid story, but I forgot to change my name on Telegram.
Oops.
So this Quantum Builder support, this seller, I don't know, this threat actor, so it's nice username. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the weirdest, most embarrassing OPSEC fail ever. But he says, hey, are you like really John Hammond? I like your content. I saw you did a video on the forum that I get to sell this on. And I'm like, this is really weird. He said, if you'd be willing, like, I don't know if you can prove your identity some way, somehow, but I'm happy to give you the builder for free. And I'll tell you a little bit about the underground cybercrime world and the marketplaces. I'm like, this is the weirdest thing in the world. Very strange gut stomach feeling when I'm having a conversation with a threat actor, cyber criminal that says, hey, I really like your stuff.
Cyber criminals are just normal people like you and I.
Yeah. So we go back and forth, and he says, hey, I'm busy. I got a couple of flights. My customers, my team is handling all the customers. And again, it's the epiphany that like, this is like a busy business owner, and there's a real enterprise. It's a real marketplace. It is genuinely a whole underground industry for buying and selling malware and data breaches and tools. But it was surreal to have that sort of interaction, and just a very weird feeling. They say, hey, I like your stuff, John. Recognize you.
Was he the author of it, or had he kind of acquired it from someone else and was selling it? So it was like, if it was the author, I could understand him having a little bit of, I have a little bit of pride in this product that I've built,
Right.
and I want to show it off to a security researcher to prove that I'm a legitimate developer in my own right.
Right. It was that. I know he is the author and developer of that tooling. And it was exactly, I think you're right. It's just, you know what? I'm kind of proud of my product. My business is my baby. And it was very weird. Like you have an MVP, sort of like high quality white glove customer service. So he said like, here's an RDP connection. It's got Quantum Builder set up for you. And I even threw in a couple like hacked Telegram accounts. And this really weird, but I don't know what to do. Curiosity, I have to go see if that's a real thing. And it was. And the Telegram accounts were already logged into like some vile and heinous servers. But Quantum Builder, I got to experiment and play with how it weaponizes Windows shortcut files and LNK things. So there was the research, but man, it was quite a story too.
That's so interesting to me that like we think of cyber criminals or people of that ilk as these horrible, yes, they're doing crime, yes, absolutely wrong, but that they still have the same sort of motivations that everybody else does. They're still proud of the quality of their work. Right. And the business that they've built. Yeah, it's not legitimate, and they're taking advantage of people, but all the same motivations still apply to, I'm proud about the website that I've built and the business that I've built.
it is a really fun talk track because when you get to again show that to people, whether it's some presentation or main stage shot, or hey, chatting with reporters, when you can do the show and tell and like, hey, let me put this in front of your eyes and say like, look, this is what these threat actors do and how they operate and what their business looks like, and it is a business, and you get to see this sort of like mirror image of what we naturally do for our own work.
Yeah.
We've got marketing departments and sales departments, and we've got operations, and we've got teams, and and sometimes the threat actors, the cybercrime end of it is better than we do. Hey, their advertising, their sales, their marketing, go-to-market brand strategy, it's good. It's better than some of us startups. So that's just a fun, crazy, wild thing to get folks really fascinated with what's out there and hopefully get the education in.
That is hilarious. Can you talk about what content you put out on your YouTube channel?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much. It's been sort of a trajectory to match sort of my life and what I'm interested and passionate about. So started with a lot of programming tutorials, moved on to sort of like capture the flag or training and war games or practice exercises, and then malware analysis, and then some dark web cybercrime, and now sort of chasing a lot more of those vulnerabilities or CVEs. So I hope to be on the keyboard. I hope to be practical, hands-on, and really pure play cybersecurity, the best that I can be for offense and defense.
Cool. And what's the name of the channel?
Hey, just my name, John Hammond.
Well, that's easy to find.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure to link that in the show notes. Can people find you on any other platforms?
Absolutely. Hopefully shouldn't be too hard to track me down. You'll see the red hair. John Hammond is the name just about everywhere, LinkedIn, Twitter. But please don't hesitate to reach out. Don't be a stranger. Would love to chat.
Cool. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Hey, this was a blast. Thank you.
You're welcome.